Hey there, it's Nathan. Have you ever had that feeling where your whole world crumbles while you're thousands of miles from home? That moment when everything you believed in turns to dust with just a few words? That was me, reading those divorce papers on my laptop screen while dust storms raged outside my barracks in Kandahar. I got the divorce papers by email. 13 years of marriage ended in a PDF attachment. Just like that. If you've ever felt your heart shatter in your chest but had to keep a straight face, hit that like button. I know that pain all too well. I'm Nathan, 42 years old, Staff Sergeant with the 82nd Airborne. I'd been deployed in Afghanistan for barely 4 months when my wife Becky decided she was done waiting. The subject line of her email read, "Let's be adults about this." The message itself? 3 cold sentences. She'd already filed the paperwork. She'd already emptied our joint account. She'd already moved her new boyfriend Jeremy into our house in Spokane. I read that email twice, closed my laptop, took a shower in the communal stall, and got dressed for my shift. I said nothing to anyone. When I returned to my bunk that night, I replied with one word. Understood. No argument. No begging. No threats. Truth is, I wasn't surprised. 6 months before deployment, things had started changing. Small things at first. Becky stopped asking about my day. Started working late at the dental office where she answered phones. Started going to the gym 3 times a week but never seemed to break a sweat. New clothes. New friends I never met. New passwords on her phone. I didn't confront her. Didn't start checking her messages or following her around. That's not who I am. But I wasn't blind either. The night before I deployed, she hugged me at the airport and said, "Stay safe, okay?" Her eyes were dry, like she was saying goodbye to a coworker, not a husband heading to war. I should have known then, but part of me still hoped I was wrong. I wasn't. What she didn't know was that I'd prepared for this moment, and what she didn't understand was that I never start fights, but I do finish them. I met Becky at a friend's barbecue in 2010. I was home between tours, staying with my buddy Jason in Spokane. She was finishing nursing school, but ended up working admin at a dental practice instead. Less stress, she said. We were married 8 months later. Becky used to say she was proud of my service, though she never quite understood it. Her dad was a bank manager, her brother a pharmacist. No military in her family. She'd ask when I was going to get a real job, not realizing that after 15 years the Army was my career, not just a job I was killing time at. If you've ever had someone undervalue your career or passion, you know how that slow resentment builds. Comment below if you've been there. We bought our house in 2014. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. 3 bedrooms, small yard, quiet neighborhood. My name was the only one on the mortgage since the VA loan was in my name, but I added her to the deed because that's what married people do. Share things. My parents died within a few years of our marriage. They left me some money, not a fortune, but enough that Becky and I could pay off our student loans and still have a cushion. I deployed 4 times during our marriage, Iraq twice, Afghanistan twice. Each time I came home, Becky seemed a little more distant, a little more restless, like she was playing a role she'd outgrown. I didn't sign up to be a military wife. She told me once after I mentioned possibly re-upping for another 4 years, "I'm tired of being alone all the time." I understood that, I did. But the Army was the only place I ever felt like I truly belonged. I was good at my job. People depended on me. In 2019, things started changing more dramatically. Becky got irritated when I called during her girls' nights. Started talking about how her friend Melissa had divorced her husband and was quote, living her best life now. Started making comments about how we didn't really have anything in common anymore. I suggested counseling. She said we were fine, just going through a phase. Then came the late nights at work, the weekends away with friends I'd never met, the new clothes, the gym membership she rarely used. I should have confronted her. But that's not how I handle things. Never have. My dad taught me to think before I speak, to be sure before I act. So I watched, and I prepared, quietly, because my gut was telling me something was coming. And in this life, you learn to trust your gut. 2 weeks after getting the divorce email, I was sitting in the mess hall when my phone buzzed, a notification from our bank app. Another withdrawal. $38,500, almost everything that was left. I set my fork down and opened the app. The joint account balance was down to $22.37. Our savings, $47,000 we'd built up over years, was gone completely, transferred to an account I didn't recognize. That night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled out my laptop and logged into our home security system, something Becky probably forgot I could access remotely. The cameras showed a strange truck in our driveway. A man I'd never seen before walking our dog. Using my coffee mug. Wearing my Seahawks sweatshirt. And there was Becky, laughing in the kitchen I'd renovated myself during my last leave. Something shifted inside me. Not anger exactly. Something colder. Clearer. I closed the laptop and pulled out my phone. Made a list. Call James, Army buddy who became a lawyer. Check VA loan terms. Contact Master Sergeant about emergency leave. Review home refinance documents. Check security on military pension accounts. I didn't feel sad anymore. I didn't even feel angry. I felt focused. Like I was planning a mission. This wasn't about emotion now, this was about strategy. When I hung up from that call with James, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to threaten. I didn't even need to confront her. I just needed to wait and watch, and let her own actions become the trap. If you appreciate calculated responses over emotional outbursts, give this video a thumbs up, and subscribe for more stories of resilience through betrayal. 2 months later, I was back on American soil. I didn't tell Becky I was coming home, didn't call, didn't text. Just checked into a motel in downtown Spokane under a different name and contacted James. "You look like hell," he said, sliding into a diner booth. "Feel like it too," I replied. James handed me a folder with everything we'd discussed: house deed, loan documents, bank statements, and something else. He pulled out a separate paper. "Found something interesting when I was digging into your finances," he said. "It was a refinance application with my signature on it. Except it wasn't my signature. Not quite. Someone had tried to copy it but missed details. The middle initial was wrong, and the stroke pattern wasn't mine." "Becky did this?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. James nodded. 3 months ago. Used the equity to pull out $330,000. Your signature is required since the VA loan is in your name only. Forge my signature, take out a loan against our house, then clear out our accounts and divorce me," I said, the pieces falling into place. "Busy woman," James replied dryly. "It gets better. She listed her boyfriend as a co-applicant. He's got a record, 2 DUIs and a fraud charge from 2019. I took a deep breath. "What are my options?" "Several," James said. "But first, you need to decide what you want." I thought about it. I want what's legally mine, and I want her to understand consequences. James smiled. "Then here's what we do." The next day, I drove past our house. Her boyfriend's truck was gone, but Becky's car was in the driveway. I parked down the street and watched for a while. Thought about knocking on the door, confronting her. But that wasn't the plan. Instead, I drove to the bank. Met with the loan officer who had processed the refinance. Showed him my military ID. Showed him the real signature on my driver's license. Showed him the forged documents. His face went pale. "I'll need to report this immediately." "I understand," I said. "I've already filed a police report." That night, I got a text from Becky. "Who have you been talking to at the bank?" Jeremy said someone was asking questions. I didn't respond. The next day, I went to the county clerk's office. Filed paperwork contesting the refinance due to fraud. Registered formal notice that no changes to the property could be made without my presence. 2 days later, Becky called. I let it go to voicemail. "Nathan, we need to talk. The bank called about the house. What are you doing? If this is about the divorce, we can discuss it like adults." Like adults, the same words from her email. I still didn't respond. James called that afternoon. "They froze the refinance money. And there's more. Your wife's boyfriend has been driving your truck, right? The one in your name? He got pulled over this morning. Driving on a suspended license from those DUIs. They impounded the vehicle." "Good," I said. "He also had some interesting things in the truck. Prescription pads from the dental office where Becky works. They weren't blank." I closed my eyes. "She's been stealing prescription pads." "Looks that way. The police are investigating." I hung up and sat on the edge of the motel bed. This was getting bigger than I'd expected. Part of me wanted to call Becky, warn her, old habits. But then I remembered the security camera footage. My house. My dog. My life. Given away like it meant nothing. No. This was the path now. I couldn't turn back. And honestly, I didn't want to. When I met with the bank fraud investigator the next morning, he spread documents across his desk and explained that Jeremy and a real estate agent named Daniel Spencer had been running a scheme targeting military families. They would convince spouses of deployed soldiers to refinance homes, forge signatures, then sell the properties below market value for kickbacks. My case helped break open an FBI investigation that uncovered 11 other military families who had been victimized. Jeremy and Spencer both received prison sentences, 8 and 12 years respectively. And Becky? She claimed she knew nothing about the larger scheme. Said Jeremy had convinced her I was hiding money, planning to leave her with nothing. Said the refinance was his idea. She'd just gone along with it. Maybe that was true. Maybe it wasn't. Either way, she agreed to a settlement. Full restitution of stolen funds, forfeiture of any claim to the house or my military pension, and a signed confession about the forgery. In exchange, I didn't press charges. The divorce was finalized 6 months after that email from Kandahar. No fault. Clean break. A year later, I sold the house. Couldn't stand to live in it anymore. Too many memories, too much betrayal in those walls. I used the money to buy a small cabin outside Missoula, Montana. 2 bedrooms. 10 acres of land. A creek running behind it. No neighbors for miles. I took early retirement from the Army. 20 years was enough. I'd given enough. I got a dog, a German Shepherd named Scout, and started doing carpentry work for locals. Nothing fancy, but it kept my hands busy and paid the bills. My military pension covered the rest. Sometimes I thought about Becky, wondered where she ended up. James heard she'd moved back to her hometown in Oregon, working at another dental office. Starting over, I guess. I didn't hate her anymore. Didn't much feel anything about her, to be honest. She'd made her choices, and so had I. One evening, I got a letter from a woman in Fort Worth. Her husband was in the Navy, deployed when Jeremy and Spencer tried to run their scheme on her. The FBI had given her my name as part of the case. "You don't know me," she wrote, "but you saved our home. Thank you for fighting back when it would have been easier to just walk away." I read it twice, then pinned it to my refrigerator. Some days, when the silence got too loud, or the memories too sharp, I'd look at that letter and remember that something good had come from all of it. As for me, I was finding my way forward one quiet day at a time. Building something new. Something that couldn't be stolen, or forged, or betrayed. Something that was just mine. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to Whispered Truths for more real stories of betrayal, resilience, and finding peace after heartbreak. And remember, sometimes the strongest response to betrayal isn't a battle cry, but a whispered truth that changes everything.